I enjoy, you know me, I enjoy talking. So,
Yeah, but you know what, John? You have something to say. You've got some smarts to share, and you got smart people on this Boroughs and Burbs.
I have you
learning is the most exciting thing.
So how do you think of the mood right now in the market or in the economy generally?
Well, my mood is upbeat. I'm an optimist. Life is better when you're optimistic. Yeah, we have some inflation. Yeah, we have supply chain problems. But I mean, come on, look around. People in other countries they're paying $10 a gallon for gasoline in Europe, as I learned on your program a week ago. I mean, come on, what do we got to gripe about here?
But are you worried that gas prices are rising, interest rates are rising, inflation is rising?
No.
So there's uncertainty out there, and there's a certain nervousness. We're feeling pretty good about the real estate market in this area because we feel like it's underpinned with good jobs. But there's definitely some nervousness in the air, and that's why I'm wondering what's your take on you're feeling good about the next few years.
My take is that interest rates have been absurdly low for quite a while, and inflation has been almost absurdly low for quite a while. So you know what? The pendulum's going to swing a little bit the other way, and I think we'll do fine. I think there are good people managing things, and it's been bumpy for 2 years. My gosh, it could be a lot worse.
Can you hear me?
I can.
I can't.
Welcome, Roberto Cabrera.
So I'm trying to log in through my phone.
No, I can hear you. We're just starting a conversation. Take your time.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Fabulous. I can hear myself. The worst. It's in my, and there's a second delay. Anyhow.
So Peter, as a long-standing fan of this show, you might be surprised to hear that Roberto and I met today for the first time.
First time.
For 2 years, I think we've been only communicating through Zoom and by phone. And today I jumped in my car, went down to the city, gave him a hug, and we went and toured an apartment together. And what a
far
great
so
thing.
Good, huh?
In the flesh, and he's the real deal.
Roberto is 10 feet tall in real life.
Okay.
Roberto, you seem like a smart guy, and good going.
I appreciate that.
I met Roberto and asked Roberto to do this with me, actually, because I think he's a smart guy, because I read his market report. Have you ever seen Roberto's market report?
No, I have not.
Okay, so I'm going to actually share screen at this moment.
I have a new one coming.
Okay.
Maybe within minutes.
Okay. Wow, that's a teaser. So here is, if you go to robertocabrera.com, the theme last month was, where's all the inventory? And we've got in New York, and he's tracking the inventory here. And then rentals and rising rents. But he's got a great deal of
he knows how to make a chart.
Right.
The numbers start at 0, which even in the New York Times, they don't always do that.
So this is a typical Roberto Cabrera market report. And that's why I found Roberto and I said, you're tracking the market, you're articulate, and you not only republish the report, the charts, but you've got some commentary on them. So that's why I asked him to join me.
What you said was, you sent me an email and you said, wow, this is a good newsletter. I need to up my game. That's exactly what you said. And I said, but I've been looking at your newsletter because you break down all the townships and you give a bullet point of an opinion of strong market, et cetera, like a couple bullet points. And it's the best because it's just a scanning down of like, you understand what's going in a snapshot. It's really fabulous.
So we could start right in with the Connecticut market reports, and we could actually go through those towns, and we could actually create a market report, you know, on the fly, if you like.
Let's go.
Let me hit share screen, and I'll pull up the first one of these. And let's talk about, and we can talk about each one, I guess, as they come up. So this is the Greenwich, and the featured photo in Greenwich is of a grand staircase because we think of Greenwich as the most expensive market. And indeed, at $3 million for the average closing price in the first quarter, it's probably, I think New Canaan is at 2 million. So when New Canaan's at 2 million and Darienne's at 2 million, Greenwich is at 3 million. When I worked in the Greenwich office, is
that big a differential?
Yeah, it is that big a differential. And when I worked in the Greenwich office, they said, you know, John, Greenwich is the last to go into a recession and always the first to come out. And then they handed me a chart of the last 25 years of Greenwich real estate prices versus the stock market and said, see, we've outperformed the stock market for 22 out of the last 25 years. So make no mistake, in Greenwich, they're paying very close attention to property values. They're up at $3 million. They're only up 1.9% versus the first quarter last year. And you see inventory has gone down from 358 to 175, down 51%. I think that last year I was looking at most of these charts and seeing that inventory was down 40%. So to have it down another 51% is from a down year is rather incredible.
Can you explain to me what happened in Greenwich pre-COVID, but there was multiple years where there were enormous houses there and they weren't selling at all? What was happening in the marketplace there?
Well, so let's look at all of Greenwich single family houses. You've got 39 active versus 62 a year ago, and 20 in the over $7 million category. And your closings are 9 in the first quarter versus 12 a year ago, and 9 in the 5 to 7 versus 13 a year ago. So clearly last year with 13 sales and 12 sales in the first quarter, 25 sales over $5 million, you have a certain confidence. And for many years, we didn't have that confidence in the market. I would tell the people at the high end of the New Canaan market or the Greenwich market, I don't know if reducing your price will make a difference because I don't know if there's any buyer out there to hear it. And so now that's completely reversed. Here comes Serena Richards. I'm gonna have to ask her how she feels. She's one of the top agents in Darien. And I see Kim Harrisman is joined the call, and she's one of the top agents in Westport. So maybe Kim has something to say about the high end of the market and why it has rebounded so incredibly well over the last 4 or 5 years. Meanwhile, I want to come back to this chart of the last, that goes back to 2015. Much has been made of the fact that the sales volume is down as a result of inventory being down. But if you look at 142 sales closed in the first quarter, it's quite a bit better than any of the previous 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 years. It's the second best in the last 8 years. So even with reduced inventory and the reduced ability to sell, it's the second best year. It's still an extraordinary time in the market. Let's also look at the average sale to price ratio for houses in Greenwich. You've got, it might surprise you to see that it's below 100% in the under million and a million to $1.5 million. It's where we hear most of the bidding wars are taking place. So I think that we're expecting at the low end of the market for people who are moving out of the city, they're looking for, you know, a starter home, that there might be the greatest competition at the bottom of the market. But actually we're seeing just as many bidding wars at the top end of the market as the bottom.
Which townships are moving at a higher pace?
I would say to get that report, I would go to, let's see, I should go to the all of Connecticut report. Let's see, there we go. So let's see, isn't it all? All right, so the question is, which towns are doing the best in Connecticut right now? So here's a map of Connecticut. And we're seeing that, and this is, let's see, this is for, to the right is a look at the total dollar volume of house sales for each town for the first quarter of 2022, and the percentage changes that compares to the same time frame in 2021. Collectively, the dollar volume of closings in the first quarter was 1.37 billion, a decrease of 24% versus the first quarter of 2021. So as we've already explained, we've got a decrease in the dollar volume because we have too little inventory. However, we're comparing it only against the most incredible year of the last 20 years. So that being said, this is not going to tell me, well, you're going to see that in Greenwich at -28 and Fairfield at the far end of the county at negative 31% are being impacted equally. Fairfield had an incredibly up year last year, along with Greenwich. You see Rowayton had an incredible year and it's down 58%. Let's see if we can find the Rowayton report. Let's see, is that Easton? Is Weston, Stamford, Westport, Wilton, Riverside, let's see, Litchfield, Greenwich, Norwalk. No, I can't find Rowayton. Let's look at New Canaan for a moment. Now, New Canaan has seen an average closing since last year up 7% from 1.8 to 1.9. And the average closing price this past month is actually down. This is a rather small sample set of 18 closings. You only had 53 closings in the quarter versus 83 a year ago. Now, typically,
that's purely lack of inventory.
Yeah, again, lack of inventory. Pending,
you hear
down by half, 43.
Are any of your buyers concerned about interest rates? Have any of them backed off, concerned, speeding to market?
No, I would say interest rates is not a factor. I think that people are hearing about the Fed rising rates a quarter point at a time. It imparts a modest amount of urgency, but people are not making their life decisions over a quarter point move or a half point or even a full point Fed move. I think that, you know, while it could take your monthly payment up hundreds of dollars, I think it's an inevitability. If you've decided to move from the city or from California or from somewhere else in the country into this area, you're going to figure out what you can afford. You're going to buy the best that you can buy, and you're going to do it. And interest rates is going to be a secondary consideration.
Nikki Beauchamp is on the call. I would love to hear from her.
Nikki, are you with us? Kim, are you with us?
Jay Overby. These are people who...
John Bainton.
doing big deals.
I'm here. Hi,
Okay.
John.
So Kim, what's the mood in Westport or in the eastern end of Fairfield County right now?
It's very competitive at all ends of the market. Just exactly what you just said. Inventory is down. Yes, interest rates are rising. People seem to be a little immune to interest rates, or actually, I think are afraid of where they're going, and that's just feeding the frenzy for the near term. They want to lock in. They want to find something to buy now because they are. I think the sentiment is that they're going to continue to rise. We're just, it's a feeding frenzy at all ends of the market.
I agree with that, with what Kim just said. I can't say there's no effect on interest rates. I had somebody who wanted to buy a $1 million condo in New Canaan a couple months ago. There were none on the market. And so somebody approached me in the office and said, I understand you have one coming up because it's currently occupied by renters. Can we see it? So we took a look, and she said, I want to lock in now and on an interest, because I want to lock in on an interest rate. So I'd like to sign the contract now, specifically over interest rates, and wait to close until the tenant moves out. I am seeing that 2 or 3 times across my clients right now, where they're trying to lock in sooner than later. And they're even talking to their banks about trying to extend to 90 days or further, and finding that they can buy an extended closing. I had somebody purchase an extended closing in Ridgefield, and we've had that on the New Canaan condo.
Purchase an extended closing. What is it costing them?
It might cost them an extra 1/4 point or 1/2 point, to buy. And they're saying, you know what, I'm going to be in that house for, quite a bit longer. I want the lowest interest rate. So I'm willing to pay a few $1,000s up front to lock in a rate that I'm going to be holding for at least 10 years. So a lot of people are actually, it's entering their mindset with interest rates rising. They're saying, I really want to be in my forever home. Whereas maybe a year ago, they said, with very little inventory and bidding wars and the COVID effect, I'm willing to settle for an interim stage. I'm willing to buy what I can because I want to make the move to the area I want to live in. But it doesn't have to be my forever home. Now people are starting to think, well, with interest rates rising, I'd really like to see if I could buy my forever home now and lock in on a 4% interest rate, because that's what I'm going to be living with for the next 30 years. I know 4%. I did that a year ago. I locked in the 2s, and I said, I'm going to buy down the rate from 3% to 2.5% because I'm going to be living with this house for the next 20 plus years. So I said the inflection point on buying down the rate was if I was going to be living in the house more than 5 years, it was worth doing. And I see a lot of people doing that now. They're saying, if I can buy down the rate and find my forever home now's the time to do it.
It's interesting because in New York, I would say there's less buying your forever home because there's a lot of mobility here. There's definitely some people who are going to do that. Definitely the people who have children, they're expecting to be there for probably 18 to 20 years, a generation. And their thought process is definitely that.
But I would agree with you about the forever home idea here. I find more people who are thinking 5 to 7, maybe 10 years. It also very much depends on where they are in their careers. If they are in that sort of nebulous point where they're not quite, let's say, a partner at a law firm, but they want to buy something that is fine for the next 5 years. And then when they're in that equity partner position, then they'll upgrade and sort of buy their forever or semi-forever New York City home.
Exactly. And with a new generation of tech people, et cetera, there are going to be a much younger generation of people filling in the gaps where the older people have left. We're going to have a lot more of that trend.
I think so. And I think the one challenge I am seeing is some of our people who perhaps went up to Connecticut and beyond, who may need to come into the city 2 to 4 times a week. It's looking like 2 or 3 times. They want to buy sort of small 1-bedrooms, maybe studios, so they can have somewhere to crash. And some of our buildings are so restrictive on their policies that I have people who want to buy something, but they don't want to buy, a $4 or $5 million property. Maybe they want to buy a $1 million Upper East Side, co-op. And these buildings that do not allow pied-à-terre ownership, it's become a real sticking point with a bunch of my clients, for sure, of late.
I have a lot of buyers in that situation where they want to buy something that eventually maybe their daughter can have later.
Exactly.
There's a lot of that. So that's a pied-à-terre purchase all the way. And there's a lot of resistance to that.
Wait, so I've heard you say 2 different things. I heard you just said there's a trend toward long-term thinking, something I could hold and pass down to my kids. That's long-term thinking versus the 5 to 7 years until I make partner and then I'll just trade into a better situation.
2 different contingents. You're talking about someone who's say in Connecticut buying a small apartment pied-à-terre in the city versus a young person, a young professional who's buying their starter, not necessarily starter, but their first stage.
And I think the difficulty there is considering that so much of our inventory is still dominated by co-ops, and those have very specific rules that literally are every building has its own set of rules. So it's at some points nightmarish from a buyer's perspective when they're trying to figure out what they want to do there.
Could you be more specific about rules? I was educated on this earlier today when I went in to see Roberto on West 69th Street, and we went upstairs and he says, well, and trying to set the price, he said, well, I have to know what the rules are. I said, what are you talking about? And he says, I want to know what kind of a building this is before I give you a price. What do you mean by the rules?
So, I mean, how much are you allowed to finance is, one aspect of it. How much do they require in post-closing liquidity? That's another part of it. So, like, as an example, I recently closed on a 2-bedroom, 2-bath on the Upper East Side, and the price was just below 1.1. Why was it just below 1.1? Because the building either down 25%, and you need to have 75% of the purchase price liquid, post-closing liquidity, or you put down 35%, and then they look at everything on a case-by-case basis. If this building did not have those specific rules, I'm pretty sure the apartment would have gone for like 125, because it was a proper, true 2-bedroom, 2-bath. But so these rules really do impact the prices at which these apartments can trade.
10% in that case.
And many of these, in that case, 10%. Then further, many of these buildings, like in this particular instance, it was an estate. So the original owner had passed away, but the heirs would not qualify to keep the apartment. So all of these things, when you are looking at something and you are thinking of, I might want, Johnny, who's an artist, to inherit this property, you really have to look at all of the rules in very, very great detail to understand if that's even something that's going to be possible. And every building, and Roberto will probably agree, every building is different.
Yep. 100%.
Roberto wasn't talking to me about how much to finance this particular apartment. He said that they're so restrictive that they'll say, What do you mean you have 20-year-old kids who might be using the apartment? What do you mean you spend most of the year somewhere else?
Absolutely.
They get into your lifestyle.
They get into your lifestyle. I had a client who sat through a 90-minute, a purchaser sat through a 90-minute board interview. I have never had anybody sit through a 90-minute board interview. That might be a record. And they wanted to know specifically what she was going to use the apartment for, because she had stated that it would be a part-time residence. And she calls me after the board interview, and she said that the irony of it was that the people who were the board members who were interviewing her were actually talking about how they only came into the city once a week and spent the rest of the time at their place outside of the city. And she thought, she said, it's a good thing that I absolutely adore this apartment. She says, otherwise, she's like, I don't need to do this. I could go spend 3 times as much on a condo and not be asked, how often am I going to come into am I going to use the apartment?
Yep. John, these boards can be can be out of control. I had a client on an Upper East Side building. It was a $4 million apartment. He was paying cash. He was probably worth $55 million. He spent most of his time in California. We submitted the board package. They came back to us 3 or 4 times with updated financial information, trying to understand this particular investment, that particular investment, where's your money, this, that, and the other. And then they finally, they were delaying 6, 7, 8 weeks. Finally, they granted him an interview. They had him fly in from California. He did his interview. After the interview, I happened to speak to him. I said, how'd it go? He said, it went great. I'm sure we'll close next week and everything will be fine, blah, blah, blah. They waited 2 weeks to give him a decision and they rejected him.
And that has changed in the last year or 2 or not? I thought inventory, has it changed?
What's happened is that the boards have had to modify some of the restrictions that they have in order to compete with the condominiums that are out there.
I heard that a year ago. I wondered, is that trend continuing?
I think so. You're seeing a lot of buildings where, just this past week, this building used to be 50% down. It's now 25% down. That's meaningful. It opens it up to a whole different buyer pool. When Nikki was talking about the 10% difference at a $1.1 million apartment, that's at the people who are in that purchase pool. That's meaningful difference.
All right, I want to switch gears. Go ahead.
When that client was rejected, was there a cause? Or did they give an explanation for the rejection?
They are not required.
Wow. I thought in the this is the 21st century. I thought in the 21st century that a great deal more transparency is required and expected in 21st century society, so it feels rather clubbish. And I'm really sort of surprised that they're allowed, that continues.
Because it's a corporation, right? You're buying shares in a corporation, and a board is legal. You have a fiduciary responsibility to all the shareholders, et cetera. Now, there is a push for more transparency, but it could open it up to a tremendous amount of liability of why someone actually did get rejected. And then you might have people who are not competent to serve on the board, and those who really should be on the board just saying, I'm not getting involved in that.
We've spent 50 years trying to refine our fair housing laws specifically to make things level the playing field for people and have transparency of the process. I'm surprised that fair housing laws and legislatures haven't required a greater transparency, but that's for another day. I want to share with you, because in New York, I know a lot of you agents have heard about the bidding wars in Connecticut. We've already talked about how little the inventory is. This just came across my desk. I'm hoping that John Bain will comment on this. I'm hoping that Serena Richards, Indarian, Kim will comment on this. But this is an example of one that just hit my desk. And I want to show you this as a perfect example. Michelle Sloan just wrote a message to everybody in the MLS Thank you to all who have shown 50 Summit Ridge. It's a fabulous house and the owners have been thrilled with the feedback. We want all offers to be submitted by 5 p.m. on Sunday, April 10th. Please submit to me. Reach out if you have any questions. This is typical now. This is a 1995 house in New Canaan, Connecticut. It's been on the market for 2 days. You see, you get the requisite shot of the green front lawn and the blue sky. We are allowed, by the way, and you wouldn't know this in New York, but we're allowed to make the grass look greener than is physically possible in March. And we're allowed to patch in a little blue sky with fluffy white clouds, but we're not allowed to modify, Photoshop the photos other than that. I wanted to show you.
Can you virtually stage?
What?
Can you virtually stage?
You can absolutely virtually stage, but you have to indicate that it's virtually staged. In this case, this looks like a staged home. I know that because everything is a shade of gray or white. But I want to show you how houses are presenting now. If you present your house like this, it will get multiple bids on the first weekend. So when we look at, why is, what is generating all this activity in Connecticut, people realize that they're going to bring in a painter. They're going to make it look, very fresh. And this is what New Yorkers want, right? How do you respond to this as a New Yorker? Is when you imagine Connecticut, you imagine a house with a green front lawn, flat property, a fabulous, eat-in kitchen like this.
It looks great to me in the sense that it's very clean and neat. I do not need to do any work whatsoever unless I wanted to, modify a room or move a wall or something like that, but everything's done. I'm curious as to the size of the house and the amount of land it's on.
Okay. So this is the MLS. You don't have one of these in New York, but this is a smart MLS page. This is what we see as agents. And you can see that the acres is 1.01. The house was built in 1964. That means it probably has baseboard radiators. I'll go back and look at the photos to see if there's baseboard radiators or if it actually has central air and forced hot air heat. You see that the above grade is 3826 feet and it's got 400 feet of basement. Basement does add, there's an expectation that you get a basement in Connecticut, and if you don't have it, it'll harm your listing. I would say more than 90% of all houses have basements out here.
What do you do? Is there any sort of requirement as to ceiling height?
In the basement?
Yeah.
No, I would say that historically you'd see 7.5 feet in the basement. And now I walked in one yesterday that had 9-foot ceilings in the basement. It's hard to do. It's expensive because they have to buy much more expensive lumber to get instead of having 8 with a drop ceiling to have something less than 8, you'd have to pay for 10-foot lumber or 9-foot lumber to get better ceiling height. And until lately, people didn't want to pay the extra for the So extra.
Speculate for me what's going to happen here. This is priced at what, 199?
1995.
1995. How many people do you think she will have shown it to by the weekend? How many offers could she plausibly get? And what will this probably sell for? And what would it have sold for pre-COVID?
I'm going to guess 235.
You're guessing. You'd advise your client who says, "I want this house. What do I need to pay, John Baden?" You'd say 235
to be competitive, because what's happening is, there's no longer market value is market value, right? And that's usually where a bunch of the offers all kind of land together. And then you get emotional value and people that just, are ready to be done and they don't want to see another half point increase in their rates and things like that. And they're willing to throw an extra $50,000 to $100,000 at the cause to be done.
So John, where would you have seen this house, say 2019, price-wise?
Let's see.
Like 1.7?
Traded recently, John? Can you look at the history?
Yeah, let's see the property history. We'll click on that. And you'll see that this last sold Yeah, so we don't really have any data.
It's been rebuilt. I mean, I saw it's got hot air.
$500,000.
It's propane heat and it's got hot air, so it's been completely redone.
Right, and it was a $500,000 house in 1996, but there is no other data to guide my buyer.
Actually, click on that. See what the square footage was then. If you look at the old listing, see what the square footage is.
Is it plausible that would have been around 1.7?
Okay, it used to be 2,100 feet back then.
Yep, so it's grown.
Yeah, I'll actually show you the old listing. Okay, that's the old listing.
Unrecognizable.
Yeah, it's a new house.
So,
or a reconstructed home, I should say.
How many showings do you think she will have by the weekend?
So recently we had one on WAHACME, and it came on for 2.5, and by the end of the weekend there were 30 showings, there were 6 offers, and it sold for $3 million. So I think that's kind of the most outrageous, because that's a 20% bump. It's interesting, John said 2,350, because a lot of us who've been watching these, we used to say, you know what, you're going to have to go another 10,000, 25,000, you know, over asking. But now we've seen so many of these bidding wars go to 10% over that John is saying, all right, I think we need to goose it to 12 or 15% over, right, John? Is that what you were thinking? Yeah. And so when I said, and if my client said 15% over, that's crazy, I would point at the WAHACME sale and say, that's a $3 million sale, or over 3 million for a 2.5. So we are seeing some examples of it being 20% in that case, 20% over.
Yeah,
now,
I mean,
let's just say you, John, let's just say you put somebody into this house for 2,350, and 2 years from now, they're like, look, we got relocated, we're going to California. Do you think you can get that back?
I think a lot depends.
I mean, it's hard to project.
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, that's the $64,000 question, is where is this market going? Is it petering out? Is it leveling off? Or are we going to continue to see appreciation? You know, I'd argue that things are going to probably hold pretty steady for the next 2 years, price-wise. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a big dip. We'd have to have something pretty massive to happen to cause that dip. I don't think a 1% increase in rates is going to do it.
We need something massive to happen, maybe like a war, $100 oil, I don't know, 6% interest rates, and 8% inflation, John? Is that what you had in mind?
Wait till Bitcoin hits 100,000, then we'll see what happens.
I do have to say, I'm seeing some of my lower end buyers, that means sub $1 million, sub 1.3, I'll put it at, they're dropping out of the market. They're having a hard time paying their gas, their electricity, their food bills. And they are, 2 clients of mine that I've worked with for the past year are no longer searching because they feel that money's tight now. I think we're starting to see some pullback, but that being said, there's an exuberance in the market. I mean, there was a house on Middlesex, came on at 1,350. I had 11 offers. It's going substantially over ask. There was another one on Stanton.
Where are your buyers going? Are they just staying where they are?
They're going to stay where they are right now.
And are they renting?
Well, in one case, they're in hospital housing. So they work for at Greenwich Hospital, so they're going to stay at hospital housing. And another one is staying in their rental.
So interestingly, just taking the tangent of the hospital, and I assume they're doctors.
They're not doctors, they're nurses.
Okay, so has anyone on the group worked with the medical doctor loans where they actually get 100% financing?
I have one right now. Yeah. And I'm having a hard time getting that offer accepted by anyone because no one understands the loan.
Yeah, I've had to just pledge a large deposit, but then they get it back when they close.
All right, so wait a minute. I got to understand this, Serena. When you say, if I've got $1 million, I've looked for a house, I can't find it. I'm not going to do anything. But we
They're-
have
they're
towns
getting-
in
They're
Fairfield
getting
County.
outbid.
We have towns like Stamford and Norwalk, which are right next door to my house. I mean, I live across the street from Stamford, and Darien and New Canaan touch Norwalk. And here's the Norwalk market report. And you see the average house is 770, up from 622. That's up substantially, but the starter homes are still available. And there's 125 closings in the first quarter. Are your clients not willing to shift?
They are not willing to shift to lower priced Norwalk or Stanford, primarily because they want a smaller town feel, not a city, and they want the schools. We're not allowed to talk about that, but that's the reasons that they give me.
So what are the rental prices like? What's the movement there? Are they going to be, they're reliant on what the landlord is going to charge, but how is the rental market?
I mean, I feel like that more and more people are staying in their rentals because they can't find the homes to buy. So we don't have a very big rental, inventory to begin with. And then now with the lower inventory to purchase, it's just, it's making it even harder.
And you guys are having trouble with any sort of construction and development, because it seems like a slam dunk for a developer to create some really great rentals because they're going to get filled at high rents.
Yeah, but the people want single family homes. That's
the whole point of being out there.
Yeah.
And land is
expensive.
There's
also, and there's zoning laws, right? The towns are very protective of not flooding the schools with renters. So a lot of the rentals that are getting approval are, 1 bedrooms, maybe a 2-bedroom.
Or age restricted.
But that being said, it'll be interesting in Darien because we have almost 400 new apartments that will be set to come online when all the development is done. Most of them so far is between 1 and 2 bedrooms, but legally a 2-bedroom could have 5 people in it. 2 people per bedroom plus 1. Yep. A 1-bedroom could have 3 people in it legally in Connecticut. I mean, obviously you could pack as many as you want, but legally that's what they say.
I know, but let me give you the counter argument. So Arnold Karp just built The View, and 40 units are for sale, 60 are for rent. And a lot of people were looking at The View in New Canaan to see, are we going to see that kind of what I'll call school stuffing? When you have 100 new units hit the market, what is the impact on the schools? And the jury is in. He rented all 60 units, and the net increase of the schools is, I think, under 6, maybe 6 to 10, or maybe 6 to 10, but under 10 people net change to the schools from those 60 rentals, and not much different profile from the people buying the 40 units. So maybe it's just a reflection of the price point, but we haven't seen evidence that the schools are getting filled up with the new development coming out. I do want to bring your attention to what I think is one of the best kept secrets in Fairfield County, and I don't live there and I have no dog in this fight, but Wilton. Now Wilton is, Serena, have you introduced your clients to Wilton? Because they can have that small town feel, and it's a great school system. And look at that. $1,179,000 is the average price of Wilton. And by the way, I could hit a 9-iron from parts of New Canaan and hit Wilton.
Yeah,
so
I've sold in Wilton early on in COVID. Most of my clients don't want the commute anymore.
Okay, but they're commuting to Greenwich, so we're not talking about a New York commute.
Oh, yeah, those particular ones, yeah, they don't want Wilton. They want to be on the main train line. It's really important to be on the train, and also to have a beach.
So Roberto, for you and your friends, if you want to sound smart in New York and people say, what's the next hot spot in Fairfield County? You say Wilton. If you don't like the $3 million average in Greenwich, the $2 million average in Westport, New Canaan, and Darien, then you should look at Wilton, because with a 1.2 or a $1.3 million average, an outstanding school system, and frankly, it's an extra 10 minutes beyond New Canaan into New York. So I actually think that the value, now historically people commuted every day and they said, I'm not going to Wilton 5 days a week. But if you're commuting, and I think it was Deborah who said commuting 2 to 4 days a week, 3 days a week has become 2 to 3 days a week, Wilton is not that bad.
Getting into the city from Wilton, that's pre-COVID, is how long?
Well, so instead of New Canaan at an hour on the train, and I got into the city today in an hour to see you, I'm saying that it's going to be an hour. But that
was off.
15.
That was not during rush hour.
Yeah, I'm doing an hour and 15. I either leave before the rush hour or after the rush hour. But you see right here in the map, Wilton versus New Canaan. It's just the next town over. It's
and the train runs along the coast.
A lot of woods.
What's going to be really interesting about Wilton, John, is, I mean, when property values went down, the mill rate went very far up, right? Which made it kind of prohibitively expensive from tax-wise. But with all this new increased values, it'll be interesting to see what happens to the mill rate when the reassessments come out. And they have, in fact, I mean, because all values have gone up in Wilton a tremendous amount.
How often does that reassessment happen?
5 years?
Every 5 years, and every town is on a different, staggered schedule of the 140 towns. So let me tell you, John, what the good news is in Wilton. If I was a Wilton agent and I was pro Wilton, I would tell you that a good deal of the mill rate, the tax rate, is dependent on a strong commercial base. And Wilton has Route 7 going through it. They have a tremendous amount of commercial real estate, a big commercial corridor. It's part of the reason that Greenwich is supported by a strong commercial corridor. Of those towns I just mentioned, New Canaan's is the smallest. So if you were trying to predict where mill rates would go at the next reval, you have to go look and see which one's going to have a strong commercial core. New Canaan's is by far the smallest, and New Canaan could be maybe the most vulnerable. Between Darien, Westport, New Canaan, Greenwich, Wilton, I think New Canaan's has got like a 5% commercial base versus 10 to 15 for some of those other towns. If anybody else on the call knows what the commercial percentage is, pipe up. But so when I look at Wilton, I say, you know what? I think that they're probably heading in the right direction with respect to mill rate. And while their mill rate was probably 25% higher, therefore prices were 25 to 35% lower than New Canaan. I think that gap may narrow over time.
Yeah, I mean, I know Darien is a proposed mill rate increase to like 17.24, which is, probably caused by supply chain, inflation.
Wait, what's the new mill rate and where?
It's being voted on. So, but the proposed voting mill rate increase is going from 16.24 or something to 17.24. Okay.
In New Canaan, I think we're also seeing an 18.26, maybe going to 19.
It's like a 2% increase is what they're proposing.
Right. Same in New Canaan.
Yeah, so I think you're going to see that across the board for most of the towns.
Right.
But I think what we are all, if property values maintain where they are, our tax base in theory is going to grow, right? So it'll put some downward pressure on mill rates. Is the hope. And also, I would also say that Darien's downtown development, with all the new commercial spaces going in that way, would also put some downward pressure and some protection on the mill rate.
Absolutely. That's what I think we ought to be looking at, is which of these towns are aggressively expanding their commercial base to take pressure off of the residential tax rate. And Darien, as Roberto, you've seen, we interviewed the Corbin project in Darien. That's adding a great deal to the tax base. Like it or not, The View adding 100 condo units in New Canaan did the same thing. It's adding a great deal to the grand list, what we call the grand list of everything taxable. So New Canaan adds condos. Darien does not have the condos, so they're adding the Corbin project. Westport's adding a great deal of condos. Kim Harrisman could probably talk to us about Westport adding condos.
Well, they're not adding that many condos, frankly. I mean, well, they are. I take that back. We have the mill and we have the mill and we have Bankside House, right? So that's a total of 34 units, right? It doesn't compare to the number of units in New Canaan and Darien that are being, produced, and we're a bigger town. I think Westport's always been very very good at managing their mill rate. It's all, it's a function of property values. So higher property values, lower percentage of taxes. We have, I think, a pretty healthy commercial base. Yes, we have some new condos. We have a lot of new construction, which is gonna, make the same properties give off a higher tax rate. So I think Westport's okay from a tax perspective. We do have, all the towns have their own challenges, in the budget with, I think, our pensions, coming due and all that kind of stuff. There's always something down the pike that's going to be a big line item. But I think, and we have our reevaluation this year, so I'm not sure what that's going to do to our property taxes. It's all just a function of the assessed value versus, multiplied by the mill rate. So you either raise the assessed values or you raise the mill rate. They're two components.
Does Westport, Kim, who does Westport look at when they're looking to try and compare how they're doing? Do they, because I'll tell you that sitting in New Canaan, we look carefully at Darien and we say, what's Darien doing? And is their mill rate increasing? And, are they building condos? What's Darien doing? What is Westport? Who do they compare themselves to?
You have to ask Jen Tooker. I'll ask her. She's a good friend. Our chief select woman, who was the head of the Board of Finance. But honestly, I don't think that there is a town that we compare ourselves to. I think we compare ourselves to, or I would say to ourselves, to try and just keep things in check. It's a tough crowd when you're catering to a populace that has a lot to say about everything. So I think keeping the mill rate in check is probably more important than keeping the assessed values in check. People don't mind if you say, oh, your house is now worth more, and that means you have to pay more taxes. But if they say, oh, your house is worth the same, but the mill rate went up, it's the same difference at the end of the day to the bottom line, to the budget. But I think it's a easier pill to swallow to keep that mill rate in check.
I think it's interesting how Westport does focus on the mill rate. I'm going to tell Roberto that of all 16 towns, I think Westport is the only one to actually lower their tax rate in the last 10 years. And it used to be close to, I think, 20, and it came down to 18, identical with New Canaan. So I was sort of leading the witness when I said, who do you compare yourselves to? Kim, is tactfully saying, we don't compare ourselves to New Canaan. But I'll tell you that the folks in New Canaan noticed when we went from third place to tied for third, to having the lowest mill rate. And we look at the mill rate of 16, we have 18. We look at the mill rate of 16 in Darien and we say, what do we need to do to achieve a mill rate of 16? $16 per thousand. That's what that means.
I got to tell you.
So
The people,
Go ahead.
the more people I know who have moved to Connecticut, they've gone to Westport.
They do. It's very well run. And it's got a vibrant downtown. It's got beaches. We don't have beaches. They have a great school, almost as good as ours. Just kidding, Kim.
You know what Westport has, I think, that is very attractive to a more of an urban buyer, is that, you know, none of us can really say that we're very racially diverse, but I think that Westport has a socioeconomic, a religious diversity, and ethnic diversity that attracts a lot of people who are looking for some level of, you know, do I fit in if I'm not, you know, blue blood Connecticut? And I think in Westport, they fit in.
New Yorkers.
I think,
correct. Brooklynites, tons of people coming from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I think Westport correlates to Greenwich very well. Like the two towns, the size of the towns and the amenities and the culture are very alike.
Except for the fact that Greenwich is double the size of us.
Except for what?
So
Greenwich is what?
Greenwich is way bigger than Westport. Double.
Well, look at the relative sizes on the screen right now. Greenwich has a $400 million. Westport is $200 million. Darien and New Canaan are $100 million in terms of total dollar volume. So you're right. Greenwich is double the size of Westport.
But if you just look at the population, it's double. I'm not even just the, you know, the volume of the real estate. If you look at the population, the number of people who live there, and the number of people who go to the high school, right? And so Westport is a
Westport?
27.
That seems low.
So yeah, that seems low. You have 27,000. Darien and New Canaan have 20,000 each, and Greenwich has 60,000 people.
That's what I mean by double. That's what I mean by double.
Yeah.
Double 30 is 60.
Yeah, I would have thought.
Pretty divergent price wise.
Did you ever try to drive to Westport in rush hour traffic though? I think that's why the prices in Greenwich are.
It's horrible.
It's horrible. That's why the prices in Greenwich are much higher.
Yes, agreed. It's always been a function of how much does each 10 minutes cost you, right? In the car. It costs you money to drive.
Now more money with gas.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just there. It's basically, it's a function of distance from the city, or it always had been. And now I think it's less so because of whatever, you know, changes that happened during COVID. If you're not commuting 5 days, if you're commuting 2 or 3 days, I think it's more palatable.
Well, what I'm learning is that people are getting priced out of Connecticut and they're coming to Manhattan. What do you think of that, John?
I think it's true.
I don't think that's true. I think it's such a, you know, I don't think it's a function of price. You either are at a stage in your life where you need what Connecticut has to offer, you know, schools, grass, you know, or you need what New York has to offer. You know, you're
okay, but what happens? Okay, I am a person, I'm seeking what Connecticut has to offer. And I come out there and I simply, just like Serena's clients, they're out of the market because they can't find anything. They can't afford it. Manhattan's a better deal. Everything's much more convenient. You know, the grassy, you know, I'll buy a second home.
No. My clients just came in and they came in from Kentucky and they looked and they said, we want to be in New Canaan. Can't afford it. Darien, can't afford it. Westport, can't afford it. And they bought in Ridgefield and they said, we love it. They bought a $1.6 million house in Ridgefield. It's 6,000 feet. It was built in the last 20 years. It was immaculate in every respect. I think the only thing they're really going to need to do is paint. And for $1.6 million, they got the house of their dreams.
What type of employment do they have?
So he is a photographer for Reuters and the AP and goes all over the world and shoots football games and sporting contests and the war in Ukraine. And she is works at one of the local one of the hospitals. So he has to get to the airport and she has to get to either Danbury or Norwalk Hospital.
But not every day.
No, she has to go to the hospital every day.
No, but he doesn't have to come to like, he has to go to the airport every day. He doesn't have to come to the city every day. I mean, that's a specific.
Right. But I you know, they're, and they've got, you know, little kids, and they wanted a place with where they could raise their family in a house in a suburban neighborhood, and so they were not going to be priced out of. They might have been priced out of their first 3 towns that they looked at, but there's a house for everybody out here in Connecticut. I just showed you Norwalk and Stamford starting, you know, with average prices in the 700s. All the way to 3 million Greenwich. So you've got quite a range. And I have to say, if I personally love Norwalk, and I would come out here and be quite happy in Norwalk until I found my dream house in, you know, in a different town. I'd be perfectly happy living in Norwalk for the first 10 years and getting a sense of Connecticut and deciding whether I liked it. Both my parents came from Stamford.
I think. How did they end up in the city?
It's funny. After college, they got jobs in advertising. So they got a tiny little apartment in Stuyvesant town. But when the kids turned 10 and 12 years old, they moved out to Connecticut. And it wasn't a function of price. It was a function of we're at that stage in our lives. I want to know from Serena, what are we going to do that now that Darien has 32 houses for sale? I just looked at the Westport.
It's actually a lot less than that. They're just not marking them as under contract.
Okay, so there's something less than 32 houses on the market. Same thing in New Canaan. There's somewhere between 32 and 38 houses on the market in New Canaan. According to the Westport report, it says 99. Remember, that's a town of 30,000, not 20,000. 99 doesn't sound quite so bad, but 32 is outrageous. Can you make a living as a realtor in Darien if there's only 32 to sell?
Well, if you're a full-time realtor and you're hustling, but you're also showing other towns at this point. You know, what I'm finding is that we're having a lot of out-of-town agents sell in our town. I mean, yesterday's multiple offer situation I was involved with had 12 offers.
What price point?
Yesterday's was listed at $1,350. The one on Sunday was under $1 million. And the one on Saturday was 1.6. It was on Duffy's Lane. They're all gone. They're multiple offers. Weburn Lane, it's 4.7. That's gone. We really don't have any inventory. We have significantly less than 32 houses. West Avenue came on the market Tuesday night. It was gone yesterday.
And we have an active number of, I think, 72 single families, John. I don't know where you got 99 from in Westport. But if you look at that list, again, you know, a lot of those have accepted offers, just aren't marked. And, you know, the ones that came on this week will all be gone by Monday.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to actually dive deep into Darien right now and show you what we as realtors see. So these are the first 25 out of the 31, and you can see that they start. Darien start. There's only, let's see, we're gonna start with $565,000 is the least expensive house in town. 995
in the background.
Ranch. Why isn't that gone? That's the cheapest house in Darien for only $500,000.
It's 95 is the backyard, and it has a creek running through it.
Got it. So that's what it looks like, everybody. For $500,000, that's the cheapest house.
Click on the map and look at it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's noisy with highway noise.
And it's tiny. 900 square feet.
So then for $700,000, I get this one. Now that's right next to the Darien Library. What's wrong with that? Nothing, right?
It's in the floodplain.
In the flood zone.
Got it. Okay.
And that one, by the way, I think has a deal.
And okay, and it's gone. All right. And then the next 48 Fitch.
Multiple offers. It was multiple offers on Sunday. I think they were at 15 offers when I submitted.
And I know,
this is the best market
people that were in the 800s that didn't get it.
We didn't get it, and we were above that.
Okay, wait, 800, and you didn't get it, and this is the house.
Can you put those in order of days on the market?
Yes.
I'm just curious.
Okay.
What's most interesting to me is that, the only thing that will ever slow a house down from selling is if it's overpriced.
What if it needs a ton of work?
So days on market 00011336777888889. So of the first 18 listings have been on for less than 9 days or less.
Yeah. So what about these other things that are been on for 1 month, a total of 1 month? Why aren't they selling?
Well, Hoyt Street is sitting on like 259 Hoyt Street. It's on a state highway, and it's on the train track, the New Canaan train line, right where the guardrail comes down.
Wait, you saw 259 Hoyt. So you said this is for $1 million. Okay, they didn't even show. Okay, so it's a location challenge.
Yeah, and there's no parking in that house.
Okay.
That's tough. That's way overpriced.
Okay.
That's
this is the best market report ever, having you guys actually talk through specific examples. And you see all those ends, Roberto, on the page? Yeah. Those are all new listings.
Yeah.
And I guess it's new if it's 10 days or less.
So if it's more than 2 weeks on the market, it's just all about price, mispriced.
Well, some are just not marked. Like Weburn Lane is sold.
Weburn Lane is sold. What about there's 460 Middlesex Road?
Where's that? That's a new construction.
Okay, so that's Weburn. Look at that stone.
That's a nice house.
That's nice. 4,750, and you're saying that's gone.
It's gone. They wouldn't even let me show it last weekend.
34 days on the market, and it's already gone. So it's not just happening at the $1 million to $2 million level.
It's not. I have buyers in the 4 to 5 million, and we cannot find a house to look at in the areas they want to be in.
I have a couple that they should take a look at in sunny New Canaan, Connecticut.
They want to be in Darien or Greenwich. Oh. I tried that one.
All right. It stops there. And so what have we learned, Roberto, John, Serena, Kim? What have we learned? Where's the market? I'm a little nervous myself that there's only 38 houses and even less in Darien, and Westport's no better. And I don't see new inventory coming on quickly enough.
It's not coming out quickly enough. Sorry.
I'm a little nervous in general because I really don't think prices are going to come down, and the cost of these houses is going to be more expensive with higher interest rates.
Yeah.
I mean, me personally, right? Like if I want to upsize my family home, it's going to cost me a lot more.
And are any of your clients willing to head into the city?
No, most of them are leaving the city for like we said, a change of life.
And it's not about price.
No, I mean, you can't really compare price, right? I mean, if you're changing lifestyle, you're changing lifestyle. But, I think we are competing against the Floridas and the Wyomings and Texas. I mean, that's probably a bigger concern. And I hope that Connecticut can kind of turn things around.
We can't leave on that note.
No, I know.
I do have sellers, but it's kind of a catch-22. I have 5 people who would like to sell, but we can't find any place for them to move to.
Right.
And I have the same thing.
One even is interested in moving out of town, out of the state. Can't find anything.
I had that problem. I had my $2.5 million client flew down to Texas, couldn't find anything for 2.5, and basically. But Roberto, she didn't not move to Texas. She picked a different town in Texas and started looking there and bought something that was going up in Texas, and then sold her place in Connecticut. So when it's time to go to Texas or Florida or Wyoming, it's time to go, and price doesn't get in their way, and interest rates certainly don't get in their way. I'm with Serena and Kim. I see the inventory continuing to drop. I don't see I see price. Therefore, prices will rise despite inflation and reduced purchasing power of rising interest rates. And it's just the way it's going to be. It's going to be the new normal. And I think it's going to be for at least the next 3 years.
The affordability is going to slow the increase. I agree that will be price appreciation, but the acceleration has to moderate because it can't just keep going.
Most of the big economists, and maybe we'll get one of them on the show next week, but said that we saw high teens price appreciation in this area last year, and that was slowed to high single digits. So we're going to see price appreciation of maybe 8 or 9%. Does anybody disagree with that? Is my information outdated? But we're going to go from a 17% increase in New Canaan to a 9% increase in New Canaan this year, which, to some people say, oh, it's worse than last year, but 9% appreciation is still pretty outrageous.
It's outrageous.
I think a lot of it is going to depend on what happens in the economy. And I think that's where everybody gets a little stalled. There's a lot of question marks, a lot of unknowns. And I think a lot of people are willing to, just take the risk off the table and sell now. I mean, if everybody knew that their real estate was going to appreciate 10% more this year and another 10% next year, they would hold on. It's just not a guarantee. And there are enough unknowns. There are enough unknowns. I'm in that category. We have a big house. We're going to be empty nesters, and we're under contract to sell our big house in Westport. We own a piece of property on the beach, and we're going to build. We're going to be renters in the interim. So I cover all of the demographics. I'm a renter, I'm a seller, I'm a buyer, I'm a builder, I'm everything. And I think that at the end of the day, you want to just rein in your risk, right? You want to just know that there's some sort, rather than, I could own it. I could just kind of like take a rider and just own it all. But I think at a certain point, there are enough unknowns that you want to just minimize the risk. Maybe leave a little bit of money on the table, but know that there's, your risk is being mitigated in the process.
Agree with you 100%. Of all the listings I have, several of them have said, I don't want to take the risk. I don't want to wait for the market to get a little bit better. I'm a little nervous with the uncertainty out there. Get my house sold this year. So you're not alone. Excellent point. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, John Bainton.
And I just want to say, yesterday, there was a report out calling for a recession, looking toward a recession for next year due to the troubles of the economy. Let's put it that way. So yeah, there's hesitation on the horizon.
But a recession that they're talking about doesn't necessarily cause a market shift.
Correct.
I mean,
it doesn't cause a market shift, but a lot of things play into it as well. So, I mean, we have high inflation right now. What do you do with your cash if you have high inflation? You put it in hard assets. Hard assets are traditionally gold. No one buys that anymore. Houses, obviously that's what they're doing. Or I guess crypto, I guess, is your third option these days. But, there's a lot of uncertainty. Like I said, I have 5 people who want to sell because of the uncertainty, but they don't have anywhere to move to yet. Yeah.
The increase in purchase of artwork, watches, Porsches.
And despite what Serena says, and gold, some people out there still buying gold. Not everybody's into Bitcoin. I love
Well,
that.
all of those other hard assets don't have carrying costs, right? I think there are carrying costs associated with these 10,000 square foot homes,
Yes.
3 acres, with gardening and pools and tennis courts and cedar roofs and oil heat. And, you know, it's not just a hard asset you're buying, it's a liability. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand.
That's true.
No, your house is your biggest asset and your biggest liability at the same time.
Correct.
All right. It's been a great show. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Serena. Thank you, John Bainton. Thank you once
Nikki.
again, Roberto, for a great show.
Thank you.
We didn't spend nearly enough time on New York. Maybe next week we can get Greg Heim and some of the economists in and talk about the New York market report to a more
following week
degree.
I won't be here.
Well, you can do it from Paris.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Roberto.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Till next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, John.